pieces of paper cut down to 7.5, and these are 11. Like I said before, you could use a 12-inch paper. That will be fine. And I'm going to score each 5.5, and then I'm going to decrease by a 1/2 inch on the spine width. So, hi everybody, this is Jen from Scrappy Posh. So, we're working on the Wild Roses album, and I lost some footage. So, I lost the footage where I cut and scored the pages. So I did a couple things. One, I started a new album. It is, it's a little bigger. It's a 6x9, but it's going to be the same concept. So it's a 6x9. Ours was a 6x8. The only difference is I'm going to make the pages a 1/2 inch bigger on this one. So this is how you make the stack the page system. And I did not create the stack the page system. I believe the same woman who created the stack the deck created the stack the page system, but I really enjoy using it, so we're going to partake in that right now. So what I have is 6 pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper. You can use 12 by 12 paper. Let me make sure I have 6. 1, 2, 3. Yes, 4, 5, 6. Okay. You can use 12 by 12 paper, and actually on my Peter Pan album I did use 12 by 12 paper, but on the Winter Roses I used 8.5 by 11, so I'm going to stick to that so not to confuse you guys. So one of the cool things about the stack the page system is that you don't have to cut your paper lengthwise, you just cut it widthwise, and it opens up a lot of possibilities. So for the Winter Roses albums, cut your pages at 7.5 inches. And of course on the Winter Roses album, I also use white. So we're going to pretend that these are 7.5 inch wide, and we're going to start scoring. So the stack the page system is super easy for scoring also, whereas the hidden hinge can be a little bit more difficult. So, to keep it simple, this is what we're going to do. We're going to leave the page at its length, and whether it be 11 inches or 12 inches, it doesn't really matter. That's just going to make the opposite page length vary. So, you always have a set page width for the first page. So, since my album's 6 inches, I'm going to make my page width standard 5.5. So every page will get scored at 5.5. So whatever your standard page width is going to be, score it at that. Then, since I have a 3-inch spine, I'm going to score it 3 inches to the right. So I'm going to score it at 5.5 for my standard width and 8.5 for my spine. And this is where you get that little page up front, that little swing. So if you were using a 12-inch piece of paper, the swing would be 3 inches bigger, or 1 inch bigger, which would be 3.5 inches instead of 2.5 inches. Okay, so the first page, 5.5 and 8.5. The second page, we're still going to keep it at 5.5. But now we want to come in a 1/2 inch. If you want 1/4 inch gussets, come in a 1/2 inch. So if you want bigger gussets, you don't go in as, or you don't go in as far. We're going to say 1/4 inch gussets, 5.5 inches. Instead of 8.5, we're going to score at 8. So your second page is 5.5 by 8. Your third page is 5.5 by 7.5. And you see how easy this is compared to, let's say, the hidden system, which always gave me anxiety when I was figuring it out. And this is actually why I have these green marks on my scoreboard. That's where the hidden hinge system, that's where I would score it for a normal 2-inch wide spine. That's the other thing, is your spine can be as wide as you want, because you don't have to piece anything together. So my last one was 5.5 5.5 by 7.5, so this one's going to be 5.5 and 7. And then 5.5 by 6.5. And then your last one's going to be 5.5 and 6. Now the rest of the pages, once we put them in, they're going to have a 1/4 inch gusset. This one's going to have a 1/2 inch gusset because it just gives it more to hold on to the page system. Okay, so that's all the scoring we have to do. Super easy, right? I have got to tell you guys that I've already edited the rest of the matting or page videos. So, I do have some questions for you guys. One of them is, I noticed in the video to follow this that, just a note, they will not be even. Now, if you have a 12 inch, this one will be even, but we don't have a 12 inch, we have an 11, so it's not even. So I noticed that it was kind of hard to see, and I thought maybe kind of hard to follow this upcoming tutorial. If it is, let me know, and I'll redo it. The only thing that I can think to do is slow it down, and I'd hate to bore people, so I'm not sure if I should do that. But the other thing is because it was very white. Everything was white. And I obviously don't want to do a whole bunch of pages that mismatch because I want to make an album. I don't just want to show you guys how to do it. But I thought maybe matting as I go would help. And that's kind of how I did the Ephemera Queen, I think. Or at least I've done it in the past. So if you guys could just give me a heads up on how you guys think or how you would like to see the tutorials formatted, or any ideas that you have, let me know. Okay, and of course as we get closer to the spine, the pages get smaller, or at least the one side of the page gets smaller. And I'm just reinforcing these folds. Okay, now for this I just use wet glue. And remember, this album's like an inch bigger, an inch taller than our other album, but it's okay. It's still, on the other one I cut 7.5 inch pages and it's 8 inch, so you still leave a 1/4 inch at the top and bottom. And I just use wet glue. You can use your art glitter glue, you can use the Scotch Quick Dry, or you can use the Ultra Bond adhesive. Any of them will work. The Ultra Bond gives me a little bit more drying time, so I'm going to try that. And the Ultra Bond is fairly new. It is in Crystal's shop. It is the same like viscosity as the craft glitter glue, maybe a little bit thinner, which probably lends to the fact that it does not dry quite as quickly. So if you're going for quick drying, use the art glitter glue. If you're going for giving yourself a little bit of room to wiggle, use the Ultra Bond. So I left a 1/4 inch at the top and bottom. I'm actually lining this page up with the inside of that spine, keeping it as straight as possible. And the small page on the front for this one, the next time we're going to turn it around, so adding interest. Of course you can do all the front pages, you know, a little bit bigger than the other, but I like flipping them back and forth. You can always add length if you need to. The other good thing about this hinge system that I like is that you're not like, if you don't get it exactly straight, your whole book isn't skewed. I don't know if you've ever put in a hidden hinge system crooked, but from that point on, you may as well just kiss being straight goodbye, because it's not gonna work. Make sure that you get adhesive all the way to the sides of your pages. Because that's important, but not over the pages. So the short page is going to go on this side, and this time we're just going to line it up with the top and bottom of the previous page, giving ourselves about a 1/4 inch. If it's not perfect, it's okay. You see about a 1/4 inch all the way up. If you line it up with the bottom, it should be straight here. So about a 1/4 inch gusset. I'm going to come to this side. You can see it's not perfectly straight. There's a little bit more over here than there is over here. Okay. Now, I'm going to alternate again. Here's the short page. It's going to go on this side this time. The Ultra Bond adhesive also ships in the winter time. It does not damage the integrity of the glue to freeze. I don't know if you've ever had to stock up on art glitter glue, but because it's wintertime and they won't ship to you. But yeah, the Ultra Bond adhesive will ship in the winter, and it does not affect, freezing does not affect it. Okay. That was my dog. Okay, you just want to make sure that you don't have glue seeping out that will glue your pages together. So I'm just flipping back and forth. The other thing this does is that every page has its own adhesive. You don't have one big piece that's holding everything in. The spine, I think, would be less likely to detach. And there's less to glue as we get closer to the center, of course. This is just my new favorite method. If I find another one, that I may switch again, but the novelty of it and the ease of it has me using this page system over and over. And if you want to add pockets to the side of each one, you can. On the hidden hinge, you kind of have to have a pocket on the side of each one, this way. This one doesn't limit you to that kind of system. Alright, looking good. And again, if you line up the top and bottom, you should line up the rest of the page. If when you get to the center pages, it may be a little bit harder to tell if you're lined up or not. Just open it up and see if you line up with the other pages lengthways. Okay, so this one I'm turning this way, and again leaving about a 1/4 inch here. Open it up, you should line up with the other pages, and if you don't, you can wiggle it around a little bit, courtesy of the Ultra Bond adhesive. Alright, one last page, and again, if this was a 12-inch piece of paper, it would be almost even, so depends on how big your pages are, because this is a 5.5, then you have a 1/2 inch, and then you'd have 5.5 over here if you had a 12-inch. I have an 11-inch, so I'm a little short. And you can use score tape if you'd rather for the spine. Okay. Top my glue off here. And there we go. Alright, so now back to the regularly scheduled program, and that is finishing the pages on this winter, whoops, I moved. Finishing the pages on this Winter Roses album. And sorry that I had to interrupt with this. Whoop, that is not straight, guys. Moving it a little around here. Sorry, I had to interrupt with this different album to show you the pages going in, but yeah, I have no idea what I did. I do have video of me singing while cutting the pages, which I didn't originally plan on showing. I'm not showing that part, by the way. You don't want to see that. But I think I turned the camera on when I should have been turning it off, and vice versa. Okay, now I'm just going through, I'm reinforcing these folds and making sure the pages aren't stuck together. So that is how you do the pages for the Winter Roses album and any stack the page system. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Thanks a lot. Okay, now that we got the book all put together, I went ahead and pre-cut the pages. So let's start with this small flap here. Again, this is a little smaller because it's not a 12-inch. So I'm just going to take the width of the flap, which in my case is 2.5 inches, add a 1/2 inch to that, or a 1/2 inch to both sides, making it 3.5 inches. And do a 1/2 inch margin on both sides. And this one measures 4.5 inches tall. So it's kind of a long, skinny pocket. And on this one, we glue down both sides, both hinges, and then a strip of glue at the bottom. I line them up with the outside of the pocket, or the flap rather. And then just make sure that it lays flat. So now we got a long skinny pocket with the flap. And on the next page, this page, or this back of the flap, we're going to leave plain. This is going to be a flap with another flap. Now this one's magnetic, but we're not going to make it magnetic. I think it'll be okay. So I have 2 pieces cut, one a bit smaller than the other. And this one's going to be 5 by 6, and we scored it on the 5-inch side. And this one is 4 by 5.5, and we scored it on the 4-inch side. And we're going to reinforce the scores. And you can put these any way you want. You do not have to follow mine exactly, but we're going to start on the inside for this one. And make sure you do not go past the fold here. Because then it won't open very well. And then this one sits on top and folds open like this, but you can always do another one this way and make like a double flap. So either way you would like. Okay, and this one I'm just going to center it since it's about a 1/2 inch shorter on both sides. And then if this does cause us problems by not letting us turn this flap because this is sticking up, we can magnetize it. Or we can put a little paper clip. Either way. Okay, and then back to the Peter Pan album that we did, the Neverland album. This next page has a 1/2 page that kind of holds down this double flap. It's more like a 2/3 page. So on this one, this is a full page. It's a 5.5 inch. So I cut one that is 4.5 by 7.5, which is the full length, and scored it at 4 inches. And then this one's going to be a little different because I'm just going to stick this right in the middle, or about 2/3 of the way down the page. I'm going to line up this side with this side of this page. If you need two, you can slide a piece of different color paper underneath it if it helps. I'll show you what I mean. Oops. So that you can line that up with either side. Once you get it lined up, push down. And we'll put a little strip of paper here, and that'll match up nicely. Okay, while that's drying just a tad, I'm going to take these two pieces of paper, and I'm actually going to punch a diagonal on these. So these measure about 3 1/8 by 4.5, and they're scored on the 4.5 inch side. That's dry enough to mess with here. And for a punch, let's go with my new cloud punch, I think. I'm just going to punch both of them at the same time. These We Are Memory Keeper punches can punch through a lot of paper. Okay. And then these two should meet in the middle. They should be just long enough to meet in the middle. And I kind of centered them on that page too, this way. Oh, no, I lied. They're going to overlap by about 1/2 inch. Okay. I lined up the top and the bottom, and then I lined them up vertically so that they are in line here. And then we don't have to put a closure on there if we don't want to, because this page is going to hold those down. Okay, and then I do have to do my diagonal pocket for the front, but I'm going to wait until I'm matting to do that. And then I have some leftover bits for tags. I'll get that later. So that is our first full page, or set of pages there. So let's get our other book out and turn. We have a large pocket, a flap, and a flap, and then this will go on after we mat. Okay, so I'm not going to do that one yet, but I'm going to pull all of this out and find our pocket. Here it is. Remember, the pages are 5.5 inches, so I have this cut at 6.5 by 5, and it's scored on the 6.5 inch side. And if you want to put decorative edges on stuff, absolutely go for it. Maybe, if I remember, I'll put tabs on it when I put it together. I always forget. Okay, so this large pocket, of course, glue down both hinges and then across the bottom like that. And then if you need to, in order to line it up, we can slide a piece of contrasting paper under it. Okay, and then we will line the pocket up on the outside. Make sure that it does not go over the crease for the inside. Okay, and then this little half page here goes on this flap. So I cut one out. I'm hoping that it fits the cut apart at 3.5 by 6, so it will be 3.5 by 5.5, which is the length of a full, or the width of a full page. If we decide to later put a decorative edge on that, we can. So that's going to go right in the middle, and hopefully it'll be adequate to put a nice cut apart or journaling card on. And then this one here, my page isn't quite as long. It's not quite as wide as this because I used the different size paper. So let's see. Oh wait, hang on. Oh, you know what? Okay, so this, I actually had a flap on this side, so I'm going to, I had put a flap under this page before I put the pocket on. So that's what I'm missing. But what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and put the page here. So I'm going to fold this. Sorry, this page measures 5.5 by 7, and score it on the 5.5 inch side. And I'm going to snug this right under the journaling card flap here. Don't put it too far in. You want to leave it about a 1/16 of an inch so that both of them will close. As long as they both close, we're good. Alright, now we're back on track. And on the other side of this one, we're going to put a flap going this way. And that is this pixie dust flap. So I cut it at 4 by 5.5, and again, hopefully it'll fit one of the cute cut aparts. We score on the 4-inch side. And that one will just line up. Again, if you need to use a contrasting piece of paper, slide it under there. It's going to go right in the center also, lined up with the outside edge. Alright. And then on this side, we're going to make a small pocket. So on mine, because this is 8.5 by 11, my pocket measures 3.5 inches. So I made this 4.5 inches by about 2 3/4. It was just a scrap that I had, so the height really doesn't matter. Score at the 3.5 inch, score on the 4.5 inch side at a 1/2 inch each, and glue. Okay, and then line this up with the outside edge, making sure not to get in the way of your crease here, which I may be a little too long. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to be about 1/8 inch too long, so I'm going to take this, and unfortunately I already scored on it, but that's okay. I'm going to score it an 1/8 inch less. So I just line it up on any line and score it at a 1/8 inch less. That's going to give me the little leeway that I need. Refold it on the new score line and put a little bit extra glue on it since that glue has already started to dry. And then a line of glue down the bottom. Okay, now we can line that up with the outside edge and we should have plenty of room. Could have probably gone a 16th, but I wanted to make sure. Now we have a little pocket. And then on the inside of this pocket, I will show you, if you remove this tag, there's a flap that it's holding in or holding flat. So I made this little flap and it measures 3.5 by about 3 1/8. Again, it's just a scrap or a part that was cut. So 3.5 by 3 1/8. We're scoring on the 3.5 inch side and placing just to the right of the fold. And then there's that. And then when you put your little tag in here, that's going to hold that down. So that turned out well. And we have one more flap, or at least I have another flap here. And I think it is this one, which is, so turn the one that we put this smaller flap on, we're going to put a large flap going this way on this side. It's the flap that covers up that pocket. And I'm put this one measures 5 3/4 by 5, and I scored on the 5 inch side. And this one goes flush here, like this. Line that up with the outside. And make sure it's all square. It's very windy here today. My dogs are barking at the wind, so my apologies if I can't cut it all out because I just talk over it because I'm so used to it. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to this set of pages, which is a pretty simple one. I left these two plain, and then I just put a swing pocket with a belly band on it, so we'll do that. So on the swing, it's not a pocket, but on the swing tab, swing 4.5 by 6.5, and I scored on the 4.5 inch side. And that goes flush here. Don't get it too close. Give her about a 1/16 or 32nd of an inch so that you don't go into the spine. And then this one, the band itself is measuring 5, and I just used a scrap. It's about 1.5 inches. Score on the 5-inch side, making it 4 inches wide. Make sure it's not too big before you glue it down. Okay, and then we're going to line this up with the outside. And I just put it about halfway down. Okay, and that's all for that page. Every once in a while, flip through and make sure there's nothing getting hung up. I think we're good. Alright, so this next set of pages is a fairly simple also. You can't make them all extremely complicated. It's just a large vertical pocket. So for my vertical pocket, I cut it 8.5 inches by about 3. And of course you can change that if you want. You can make it thicker. And I scored at a 1/2 inch on the 8.5 inch side, both sides. And then for this one, we glue along the gussets on both sides and along the one long side. Like that. And then we, like I said before, you give it about a 1/16 or a 32nd inch so it's not butted right up against the gusset in the middle here. And that's that page. Super simple. Okay, the next set of pages we're going to do is a double pocket. And for that, and this one's super simple too, and then we'll be halfway done because the next page is the middle page. So for the double pocket, this page happens to measure 4.5 inches, so I cut the pockets at 5.5 inches long each. This one measures 3.5, and this one measures 2.25. Like, not, the width is important on this one, but the height is not. So you score it at a 1/2 inch on both sides, on both of them. And then I'll show you the secret to not bulking up your album too much. And the first one, we put glue on both 1/2 inch and then across the bottom. And here. Line this up with the outside here. Make sure that you don't go over your middle gusset. And then on this one, we're going to take and cut a 45-degree in one side here. with the gussets closed. And then we are not going to glue the bottom. You can if you want. You'll just make a shorter pocket. We're going to leave that open so that the pocket goes all the way down. Glue on just the flaps then, the hinges, and slide that right down into the pocket, the big pocket that you just put on there. Okay, so now you have your little double pocket, and this one we're going to leave blank, one of those nice big images like we did here. Okay, now we're going to open it up to the middle, and I just used a like quadruple flap on both sides. This is a great place to put a waterfall, because remember, your gusset in the middle is a 1/2 inch versus all the rest where they are only 1/4. So for this, I cut 8 pieces, and the ones that I cut measure 4.5 by 6, and we scored it on the 4.5 inch side. So I'm going to move my book out of the way. First thing I'm going to do is do a punch. We'll take 4 pieces at a time. And we'll do the same punch that we did before. And then reinforce the score. Oops. I punched that on the wrong side, but that's okay. I don't think anybody's going to notice, and you can always punch all of the wrong side if you want. I'm not too concerned about it. It's a little surprise for whoever. Okay. That did not fold right. Guess that was the only one that I had turned around. Again, this is 4.5 by 6, scored on the 4-inch side at a 1/2 inch. Alrighty, bring our book back. And it's super simple. Cleaning off my tip here. And we're just going to put it right in the middle. There is a difference between this album and the Neverland album, is that I made these big pockets on the Neverland album. Honestly, I didn't even realize that until I already cut these. And I think it just adds a little bit too much bulk, so I left them off. So start on your, well, it doesn't matter what size you start on. I start on the outside because it's easier for me to see. And then you give yourself, like I said before, like a 32nd or 1/16 of an inch on the inside as to not go over your gusset, and then line it up with the bottom and top of your previous one. And do it again. This time we're going to open it up, and we're going to butt this right up against this, the one that we already did. Oops. Slid right out from underneath me. Okay, there we go. It's still looking good. We'll do the same here. We're going to butt this one up against this side. Okay, so that when you're ready to mat or fold or whatever, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can do it the other way, but I'm going to do it that way. And we're going to do the same exact thing to this side. This time I'm going to start on the inside because I want to line it up the best I can with the one I did over here. And we are officially halfway done, by the way. So, I'm going to say that looks pretty good. And then go to the outside. Okay, you line up the outside and you line it up vertically with the paper that you've already put down. And do the same with the inside, except you line it up with the one that's already there. And that is your set of middle pages. Got some adhesive on there. Okay, so I messed up a tiny bit and did not realize that because I used an 11-inch piece of paper instead of a 12-inch piece of paper, that my inside pages aren't the same width. So when I went to fold this, I have interference. We're going to fix that by simply cutting a 1/2 inch off. And I have a portable cutting board here. But you can use any cutting board that you have. You can also use a border punch to just punch off. And I am just going to use my metal ruler and cut off a 1/2 inch. And then we can add those punches back on. That was the cloud punch. So no worries. I will put a note in there if you use the 11-inch to cut these a little shorter. Just the inside ones, the outside ones are fine. Okay. Okay, so it's just the one side that has to tuck in here. we have to cut. Alright, crisis averted. We cut a 1/2 inch off that we originally didn't have. That's if you use the 11-inch paper, the 8.5 by 11s. If you use the 12 by 12s, you won't have that problem. Okay. Flip. The next set of pages is a series of flaps. I'll show you on the big album here, and a belly band. So the series of flaps come from the inside out, just one after another, and then it gave me a chance to use this cut apart. And then this is just a belly band on this side, a wide belly band, so we're going to do that. So my series of flaps, and this time you don't have to worry about how long they are, as long as they're not longer than your page. I cut them all at 4 by 6 and scored them on one 4-inch side, leaving them 3 by 6 flaps. And you want 3 of those. The fun part about doing all the flips and flaps and stuff at the beginning is that you guys can pretty much decorate now. You don't have to wait for me to decorate till the end. I mean, after you guys get all the flips and flaps and stuff that you want, you're good to go. And I just centered this starting on the inside. I didn't center it very well, but that's okay. Leaving yourself a bit of a gap. And then each sitting in front of the other. You can always go back and put scrap pieces of paper over this. I just left mine plain in the other album. Okay. My fold is a bit off somehow. That's okay. I'll tell you what I mean. Somehow I probably folded along the valley and not the peak or something when I folded, but you can see here that it's a little more than a 1/2 inch on this side. That's fine. I just want them to line up when they're all closed. That's more important to me than having them when they open all measure the same here. And then the belly band is 8.5 by whatever you have laying around. I think this is 2.5. Yep. And fold it 1/2 inch on both sides on the 8.5 inch side. And I had Lynn from the ASC Facebook group do the trio tutorial, and she did just a really great job. And all she had to do is one tutorial, like start to finish. She followed it, like I said, did a great job, and now she's doing her own mini album all by herself without any tutorial, which is the awesome part about mini albums, is that once you learn the basics, you don't need help. You can make up your own. Alright, so this page, I'll pull it over here. This page just has this little flap. I wanted the chance to use this little cut apart, so I'm not going to add that because I don't know that there's anything that I want, but I do have the piece cut if I want to. So I'm just going to stick that in here. I'm going to put a piece of washi tape on it. by the hinge, so if I don't ruin anything. I don't know that I'm going to add that. I'm going to leave it there in case I find a little something I want to add it for. And then this page, we're going to do the flaps, but we're not going to do the diagonal pockets yet. And I'll tell you why. It's because that anything diagonal is easier to do while you're matting. So we're going to add the diagonals while we're matting. But for the pockets themselves, I want them to meet in the middle, so I cut them at 4 1/4, and this is 4. And I think I'm going to cut them down. I'm going to do 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 because I don't want them to run into this. So 4 1/4 by 3 3/4. It'll give me a 1/4 inch here so they don't run into the outside page. Okay, that'll give me room on this side. 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 scored along the 4 1/4 inch side. It's going to be very similar to the other page that we did, except that once we mat it, we'll have diagonal pockets. We can stick something in there, and it's just a really neat effect. Put my black paper on there again so you guys can see it. And so it's easier to stick these on. Goes to the outside. This one also. Do a little dry fit there, make sure I measured right before I stick it on there. Yep, they fit up pretty nicely. Alright, and that's how we're going to leave that page for now. We'll finish it later. Alright, so the next set of pages is just a flap that we, like, it just keeps going. And I'm thinking I only cut one flap here, which is enough. Oh, I got 2. Okay. Definitely got 2. So, let me see, where am I? Here we go. Okay, so I have 2 cut at 5 1/2 by 6 and 2 cut at 5 by 6. And these we score on the 5 1/2 inch side. And they are going to attach on both sides here and here, in about the same spot. We're going to try and center them. This is a great way to show off like an entire scene. Like if you have a whole 12 by 12 piece of paper, maybe even the front or the top and bottom that you wanted to like showcase, this is the way to do it in a mini album. Alright, and then we're going to take the smaller piece and it's going to go on top this way. that when you open it, it folds out and out and out. I'm just gonna, this just lines up perfectly with the outside edge and leaves you a 1/2 inch here. Same with this side. Lines up with the outside edge. If you wanted to keep going with this, you can add another lip in here, like you can keep going. Another one you can fold out and out and out, as long as you make that one just a little bit shorter than the previous one, like here. These I just added like a little 2-inch flaps, and if I have an image that I need these 2 and 3-inch flaps for to accommodate, we can add that when we're matting. It's not a big deal. It's just a cut piece of paper to the size that you want it, and then score, and that's it. So these always add a big impression, like a big difference in your albums. So that is that page. Going on to the next page, we have a tiny flap with a pocket. I don't think I cut that one, but I certainly can. So I did the flap, but I forgot the pocket, which is not a big deal. I probably have something laying over here to the side that I can use. This paper happens to be, and it, like I said, the size can change, but this one's 5.5 by 4.5, and I scored it along the 5.5 inch side. Which is going to leave me a 5-inch flap that I need a pocket for. So I'm going to go cut a pocket that is 6 inches long by whatever strip I find. Okay, so I found this 6-inch long piece of paper, and it is 2.5 inches wide. We're just going to make this pocket by scoring at a 1/2 inch on both 6-inch. On the 6-inch length, width. Glue the hinges, gussets, whatever, in the bottom. Now we have our little pocket. Okay, and then this page is going to be a double pocket with tags. I'll show you. And in order to do this, you just take your height, your page height, divided by 2, add 1 inch for each of them. So, because my page height is 7.5 inches, these end up being 4 3/4, scored at a 1/2 inch. On both sides. And those should butt right up in the middle. And when you mat them, you can either mat them all in one big mat across the length, or you can mat them separately like I did. Make sure they fit up. And these again on the hinges and then across the back. Give yourself a tiny bit of room. Oh, and I didn't quite make them as long as the paper, so these actually measured 2.5 inches again. And it looks like this flap measures about 2 3/4. Don't forget to glue the bottom or back. Butt that one up against the first one, and I would make them straight along the front. If they don't line up perfectly along the back, it's not so bad. Alright, and there's that page. And then when we put the tags in, it looks really neat. The last page here is just a big, tall pocket. And I didn't quite make it as tall as the one that I had in here because this is the paper that I had left. So this original pocket is 6 inches, but mine is 5. So I made it a 1/2 inch shorter. And I believe this page is 5.5 inches. Yep, so this one's measuring 6.5. So this is 5.5 by 5. Scored at, or 6.5 by 5, scored at a 1/2 inch on both sides. And across the bottom. Okay, and then again, I'm going to line it up with the outside. Make sure it doesn't go over the hinge over here. It may stick out just a little bit further on this side. You have to make sure it doesn't go over the hinge or else it won't open. Alright, last but not least, we have a waterfall. But I'm not going to put the waterfall in until I mat this back piece. So we have just a few things that we need to do. Plus I want to make sure the sizes are good for whatever images I want to portray on this waterfall. So I will show you the Neverland album to give you an idea. And this one is for the band that holds it down. So the Neverland album, we did the journaling cards. And they kind of tell the story. As much as I could get them to tell the story. Except for this one. This one should be at the end, but I like that image, so. And then that's magnetically closed. I like it, I like it, I like it. Okay, and then, of course, we have all our little cuts that we did for the outside. And on this album, I've already done them. So we're using the Winter Roses, and I cut all the images that I wanted for the outside of the album and set those aside. So I know I won't use them. And then we are ready to mat. We're nearly done. Now for the fun part.